the government became unreliable. They went to a lottery system on who you could have. There were so many people asking for the use of this program that they had to institute a lottery. And 4 years in a row, out of A, B, C, and D, A being the best, I got D. And so they would say, yeah, you're going to be able to get them. You're going to be able to get them. And 2 years I went for it and said, okay. And they didn't get here till August. That doesn't work for me. And so the business needs to be consistent and our government needs to be consistent. So there again, I was relying on somebody that I couldn't count on. And that was the federal government.
Welcome to the Dynamis podcast this week, guys. We're going to divert from the typical investing strategy, and we're going to talk about something that I'm really passionate about right now, and that is building your vertical income as high as you possibly can and doing it in ways that I think is oftentimes undervalued and overlooked. And looking ahead at the horizon of what we have ahead of us, if you can carve out a little niche in one of these industries that people have historically overlooked, there's a lot of fruit at the end of that rainbow waiting for you. And so I'm really excited to talk to a business owner on par with what I'm passionate about right now, and that's developing a vertical income as high as possible. But before we do that, I want to cover a couple quick housekeeping items. Guys, the reason I do this podcast, the reason I take my time, the reason I pay to have it produced is because I care about the longevity of this nation, and it is my obligation and my civic duty to inspire all of you to stand up head high, shoulders back, and to march headlong into adversity, to take a risk and to pour your resources back into Main Street because we love this nation. It's the best nation on earth, and we have an obligation to preserve it at all costs. And what makes this country great is small America, Main Street, the small business owner. We want as many citizens as possible to be business owners, to be autonomous. We don't want the majority controlling all of our services, our products, our businesses. We want to preserve the America that is individual, is autonomous and collective. America is this incredible melting pot, and we want as many strong business owners as possible. And so in order to do that, I have a tax for you to pay. And that tax is, I need you to talk about this show, like the show, subscribe to it, send your friends the show, have them listen. Get 2 people that you think would be interested in and send them an episode and write a review. It takes less than 90 seconds to write a review, and it really helps us out and it spreads the word. We're creating a movement and we want everybody to come along. Without further ado, welcome to the Dynamis podcast this week, guys, and really happy to have you listen in to this conversation. This week, my guest is a local business owner in the Bear Lake Valley. We're currently sitting in an Airbnb, luxury Airbnb property in Fish Haven, Idaho on Bear Lake. And my guest this week is Bryce. Bryce, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim.
Can you give us an introduction to who you are and what you do?
My name is Bryce Huefner, and I run a local landscape company here in the Bear Lake Valley. I grew up doing it with my dad. He ran a one-man show at the time. For most of his career in the Bear Lake area. I grew up doing lawns with him and some landscape construction, some sprinklers and things like that. Fairly simple stuff at the time. And I came back after going to college. My wife and I decided it was a good place to raise a family. So we came back when the opportunity came up, and we've transformed the company from a one-man show to 30 employees, 40 employees in the summer, 10 or 15 employees full time. So that's where we are. And we do the whole gamut of landscape construction and maintenance now.
Aside from landscape construction and maintenance, you also offer additional services, correct? Can you talk about some of the areas you've considered or are branching out into?
Yeah. So being a service industry like we are, there's always people asking for different services that they need. And we have an alarm company that's a sister company. We also have construction side that we do primarily in the wintertime, do small construction jobs inside because it's cold here in Bear Lake. And if we can find things to do in the wintertime to help our clients keep their homes where they would like them to be updated and things like that, then we help with that. But in the summer, we focus on the landscape construction and maintenance.
Do you guys do any snow removal?
We do snow removal. The Bear Lake Valley, it can be hit and miss on snow removal. That's probably how it is everywhere. We don't necessarily get a lot of snow here. We always get cold. Last year was a phenomenal snow year, lots and lots of snow, and we were really busy. And last year, our snow revenue was probably 3 times what it's ever been there was so much snow. And we're growing, and so there's more customers than we've ever had as well. But so much snow. We'll see what happens this year on the snow removal side.
This is a really unique market because we are living in the midst of an economic boom up here. It's very odd because most of the nation seems shaky and uncertain. And when you come up here, there's just vibrant, explosive growth. Every time I come back for a visit, there's new dirt that's being developed. There's new developments going in, new houses, new structures, new businesses. It's more populated. And so you, as a family-owned legacy business, are really positioned just perfectly for an economic heyday. As they say, make hay when the sun is shining, and the sun is starting to shine. And there's a lot of reasons why this particular area is experiencing so much growth, but it must be interesting for you sitting where you're sitting today. And you mentioned that your dad was a landscaper in the Bear Lake Valley as well.
Yes.
That must be a huge difference from when dad was doing it to what Bear Lake is like today, I would imagine.
Big difference. 30, 40 years ago, even 50 years ago, Bear Lake was much smaller, of course. And the money in Bear Lake was not what it is today. A lot of the jobs were just small jobs. That's changed. A lot of the cabins today are homes that are really nice. 40, 50 years ago, the cabins were shanties and shacks that people would build, and they'd come stay in the summer. They wouldn't insulate them or anything like that. They'd shut them down in the winter and they were gone.
Yeah.
And now there's more people that are coming up in the winter. And winter's a great time in Bear Lake. If you like snow and you like quiet, and if you like to ski or snowmobile or things like that, then wintertime's a great time to be here.
When Bryce says that the homes are really nice, what he really means to say is that people are developing multi-million-dollar properties up here. And it's this weird shift in time. You could see it because these old shacks, they are still up here and they're standing next to these multi-million-dollar mansions. And just the contrast of these two structures, it's just very striking. And you can see that there's more and more coming. Let's talk about your business in particular. And at the beginning of the episode, I mentioned that my theme is to build a vertical income as high as possible. And service industries, to me, I'm very bullish on service oriented industries. And there's a lot of reasons why. Number one is I think we are in a time where people who have the skill set to provide these services are very finite and they're fleeting, and there's less and less people every year, which provides a ton of opportunity for people who have the skills. It also provides a challenge because as you expand and grow your company, there's less and less people who have the skills that can be laborers for you. So now your headache is keeping employees and training them how to do these basic skills that more people used to just know how to do. There's gold in dirty industries and a dirty job. And what you do, it's a dirty job. Yeah. And I personally have an affinity with landscape type industries. I told you a quick story before we started recording. When I graduated college, in between careers of going to work for the government, I was going to go work for the FBI. I signed on with a landscape crew for the summer, and I got some insight to how this business model runs. And not only did I love it because you're physically seeing the impact you're making on the community, you could drive down the street and look and see that used to be a field covered in weeds and look at this beautifully designed garden or whatever. But there was subscription-based revenue models associated with these service industries. And I was offered the opportunity to purchase this landscape company that had a construction install arm. They had a small offshoot that did water features and low voltage lighting. There was a stone patio offshoot. Then they had two mow crews. One was residential and one was commercial. And at the time, I was just very young and I didn't understand what I was looking at. And I thought the money was astronomical. I had no idea how I was going to get it. And since then, I have always kicked myself because what you do is just one of those services that I think is easily overlooked, that everybody needs, and they continuously pay to be provided that service. And I joined this mentorship group I was telling you about. It's called Go Abundance. It's a mastermind of entrepreneurs. And everybody in this group, they are 7-figure earners. So either they have multi-million-dollar net worths or they're earning some comparable income. The reason I joined the group initially is because a lot of them were investors in the real estate space. In fact, everybody in that group invests in real estate, no doubt. But once I got inside that circle and I started to see who are the most successful players in this group, in my brain, I just imagined it was just real estate investors that continuously invested. And what I saw shocked me. It was actually the people, and it makes such logical sense. It was actually the people that had the strongest businesses, the strongest vertical incomes, active incomes that could take and allocate the excess of that income and pour it into passive income revenue streams. Some of the most successful individuals in that group owned service-based companies. And one of them in particular is a multimillionaire, and he owns a landscape business. He made his money mowing lawns, and it just blew my brain wide open into thinking, here's this thing that seems dirty, is oftentimes overlooked, and has so much runway to not only impact your community, provide jobs at a level for lower to mid income earners in the community, but also to create so much layered revenue streams from all these added services. And so I've become obsessed with landscape companies. And when you agreed to do this interview, I was just beside myself because I really couldn't wait to dig in and learn about what you were doing. And of course, your business today is much different than how it started. But before we dig in to what you're doing today and what I find so exciting about your company in particular, you have 30 seasonal employees, 10 to 15 full-time, and in the summer, anywhere from 30 to 40. You have a fleet of trucks. I see them driving down the road constantly. There's somebody mowing the lawn. There's somebody doing an install. I can't drive town to town and not see one of your crews, but it started as a one-man show.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what led to the shift of you scaling and expanding, and what was that like? I'm sure it was scary.
Yeah. So the shift occurred because when my wife and I came back and we began working with my dad, he wanted to be done. And in order to pay him for the value of the business and raise our family and have enough, we had to scale it. And so we grew it, and he sold it to me for $150,000, and we paid him back that amount over 10 years, I think. So it's not a lot, but that's what it was. And so we scaled it in order to be able to pay for the business and raise our family, and also to create more abundance for ourselves. So we began bringing people on. We've had a lot of growing pains. Finding good labor is difficult, and it's a challenge. You find the good ones, you try to keep them. We hired a lot of high school students and college students, and that's been really good for the most part. Some we've had to let go and haven't worked out as good, but some of them have been great. And a lot of them have matured out of it and do their own things. There's been a couple that we've been able to keep, and now they're managers and things like that, division leads in our company. So we have, at this point, I think 10 different crews. We have 3 mowing crews, a spray crew. We have 2 within the maintenance side, 2 sprinkler repair crews. They're a one-man crew, but they're on their own truck, and they just maintenance sprinklers and homes or whatever that people need, mostly outdoors, but can be indoors if needed. So that's 6 there, I think. And then on the construction side, we have a trucking division to haul our materials, because we have enough now that a couple of years ago, I wanted to do more vertical and take care of our own issues in-house, not have to rely on other trucking companies to haul our gravel and our topsoil and things like that. So we have a trucking division, our trucking crew, and we have 3 install crews. Yeah, we have about 10 different crews, and we keep them busy.
What you just hit on right there is the common thread of entrepreneurship. So initially, humble beginnings. You needed to grow just to sustain your family. But then what you ran into is additional problems that you didn't foresee. In order to solve that problem and mitigate cost, you decided to expand the company into a new area. When you inherited this company, I would bet you probably didn't foresee having a security division, a trucking division, a spray crew, 10 separate crews. But it's just one of those things that kind of happens almost naturally out of necessity to solve your problem as the entrepreneur. And in the market that we're in up here, it's luxurious and there's a lot of money in the market, but it's locked in and it's difficult to find certain services and labor. And I'm sure it wasn't your number one desire to have a trucking division. It just came out of necessity because you were having headaches but from receiving materials. And instead of doing the same thing and beating your head against the wall, you said, let's take a risk and solve the problem.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah, and that kind of plays into, we always had quite a bit of equipment here, skid steers and tractors and things like that, because historically we couldn't rent that stuff, even just for a day, because we'd have to drive 40 miles away through a canyon, an hour drive, to pick it up. And so we had lots of equipment that we would use and purchase, and that kind of goes along the same lines. You have to have what you need in order to do the job. And that probably plays anywhere you're wanting to grow and be able to take care of yourself. You need to make that investment in equipment to get the job done that you need. You also got to invest in your employees. That's the number one thing you must do, is invest in your employees, both in training and also just in compensation, because they have families to raise, they have things they need to do. And our goal as a company is to make it so that we all benefit. My managers and my leaders, I want them to be successful because I want them to be happy and abundant and have an abundance mindset. Especially in the off season, my wife and I will have some abundance mindset trainings. Every Monday morning, we'll do these trainings because a few years ago, we learned about the abundance mindset from people like Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, things like that. And we've just learned that the mind is so powerful that it can create your life. And we are trying to pass that on to our employees because we feel it empowers us as the company owners and our employees to do better and to have more abundance, and our company will be better.
I'm a mindset junkie. I think everything in life comes from a few finite places. And number one is your alignment with God, first and foremost. But you can't just pray and sit on the couch. You got to move your feet. And in order to move your feet, you need clarity of vision. And oftentimes when we envision, what happens is unconsciously, unknowingly, we start to create or manifest what we're envisioning. What made that shift for you, that mindset shift?
I don't remember the specific time. It wasn't like a ding ding moment. It came over the course of a year, probably. Some of it started with some health issues that I was having. So we started looking outside the box of what you typically see in the world or where you go for advice. But then we also saw that in our communities and in our institutions. And we just realized we couldn't rely on other people. There's only one person you can really rely on, that's God. And we've always been religious, but it was something that kind of came to us that we can't rely on the institutions of man. We have to rely on God.
Absolutely.
And once we began to really understand that, our mindset changed and we realized we can be abundant or have abundance and still serve God. At the time, despised money. Not despised it, but like...
It was an idol.
Yeah. And we didn't want to be rich because you didn't want to be that way. But we've learned that the more you can generate, the more you can give.
Absolutely.
And of course, you have to do that within the bounds God has set and bless the lives of others and yourself. If you're keeping it all for yourself, the ends does not justify the means. So you have to do it right. And God will bless you. And we've learned that. And our mindset now is that we're going to do good for ourselves, do good for our employees. Money will flow to us and we can do the things that we need to do.
God knows the intent, the contents of your heart, right? And money, if you idolize it, yes, is evil. However, if you view money as simply a tool to grow the kingdom, then what you do with that money, how you allocate that tool can become extremely helpful to the expansion of the kingdom.
Yeah.
How you bless other people. That money that we get, God unlocks resources to those who are able and ready to receive them, right? And how we steward those resources, number one, that doesn't belong to us. We just get to steward it for a period of time, right? And how we steward that determines the amount that we get to continue to steward.
And that's talked about in the Bible just briefly, the talents. It gives the servants the different talents, and the servant who gives the most talents to really does well. And so it is how we use that tool to serve others and God.
Absolutely. We're going to jump back into the business side because this is something I'm really excited about. Everybody who pays attention to business to their bank accounts to investing. It doesn't take a genius to understand that what we are currently facing is somewhat of a white collar recession, which everybody thought that back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, hey, if you're in these white collar industries, you're very
Go to
safe,
school, get a desk job, and you'll be.
set for life.
And that's not how it's playing out right now.
That is not how it's playing out. In fact, the people in service industries are becoming very finite. And what it's doing is making their skill sets incredibly valuable. And so all of these people that have white collar jobs who were earning healthy six figures and thought they were very safe, all of a sudden are on the bubble. And all of them are nervous. And they have no other skill set other than sitting inside of that cubicle doing their white collar job. And what's happened that is very unique right now is that there is a huge margin of opportunity for those who have a specific skill set in service. If you can build something, create something, do something. And how funny is it that it was this overlooked, like, you don't want to do that, you need to go to college. And it's those individuals that can do these dirty jobs now that are what I would say, what I would bet on if this was a horse race, as the next wave of millionaire entrepreneurs, because they possess something that other people need and don't have. And we're talking about your business in particular. I'm big on buying businesses right now. I'm very excited about acquiring small businesses, optimizing them, and continuing to grow the legacy that original business owner stewarded and nurtured. And when I talk about service industry businesses, I'm talking about pavement companies. I'm talking about HVAC, carpet cleaning, painting.
That's funny
companies.
because we're actually talking about, I have a son in North Carolina right now, and I'd like him to move back, but he's installing cabinets and he's killing it in North Carolina, doing really well. But they just had a baby, and we'd like him to be more near us. North Carolina is an awesome place,
right?
But it's a long ways away. And a paving company is something we're actually putting some numbers to see, take an opportunity in this area, remote, to see if we can have a paving company here.
And this is what's cool about your industry is you have a trucking division, you have equipment, you have heavy equipment. And for you, once you scale at a certain point and you have a certain skill set, you can take more and more risk without wagering everything, without wagering the whole egg basket. And if it doesn't go well, you can just convert those trucks right back into hauling material for your landscape business. But your business in particular, why I'm so fascinated with it is because, number one, I feel like I had a missed opportunity when I was younger. And number two, when you're looking at acquiring a business, what you really want to acquire is something that has a lot of horizon to grow and optimize, little overhead, right? So we don't want to sell a bunch of products. We don't want things sitting on the shelf that we have to inventory. And what if the market shifts and it's no longer in demand? I'm assuming that you have inventory, but they're for your construction install, and you don't have warehouses of it that you're selling to the consumer. It's for your company's use. And when you're buying a company, you really want to target businesses that we have what's called subscription models. So if you think about Netflix, for example, people purchase Netflix, they watch TV in the evening, and every month their bank account is billed, okay? And they don't think about it. And it's just this dead money basis that builds the foundation. But then what Netflix does is they say, oh, sorry, there's too many people using your account right now. For an extra $10, we can add a second screen. Here's what I learned, and I'm going to turn it over to you because you are by far the industry expert. I'm an outsider. I just got a glimpse and it got me excited. But what got me so curious about lawn care is that when you have a landscape company, you have this subscription model to where there's dead money, there's revenue being generated by something like mowing, for example. Every week, every other week, you have a crew, they work a rotation. And the more clients you get, the more subscription you have. And then if you want to do a fall cleanup, hey, it's a little sprinkled on there. If you want to do a spring cleanup, a little sprinkle on there. Oh, you want a sprinkler system for your garden? I can have my construction crew. Can you just speak a little bit to that type of model? What is your fundamental foundation? What do you focus the core of your business on? What pays the bills? And then how much risk do you take for these add-ons, these subscriptions, the spring cleanups, the construction installs, the sprinklers? When you look at your business as a whole, what's the base hit every week that's really bringing it home for you?
So the maintenance side is not as glamorous, or if there's anything glamorous in any landscaping, but the maintenance side is less glamorous even than the construction side. But in 2008 and 9, when the economy tanked, of course, our construction division tanked with it, but the maintenance division just kept on going. And because there'd been so much growth, even in 2008 and 9, to the build up to that, the maintenance was really busy. And that was just the foundation that kept us going through that next 3 or 4 years. And then the construction began to build back up. So that was really nice to have that. We don't run it on a subscription. However, we've tossed around the idea of having annual contracts. Right now, we pretty much just, we mow it, we bill them for what we mow it every month, things like that. But that generates a lot of paperwork. So we're talking about making a change there to improve our business still in our business model. And subscriptions are one way to do it. Then you divide all the work up, you do it, and then you divide the payments up in a 12-month cycle. And we're looking at going into that. And we're also looking at some new software. The software we're using right now is bad for our financials and things like that. So we're looking to change. Those are all updates that needs to happen. As far as trying to reach out into new areas, when we did the trucking, I had to buy a couple dump trucks. And it's fun and exciting. And I bought an excavator, a large excavator, and I bought 20 acres of boulders down in Bloomington. And so we mine boulders out of there. And it's all part of the investment. And it's fun. It gets to the point where it's fun. It's always risky and scary, but you don't want to let fear drive your life. So you make a plan, have ideas, you work on the ideas until you can make a plan, and then you implement the plan. And they don't always work, but sometimes they do. A couple of years ago, I started a fire prevention company. I was on a fire department here in town for 20 years, served as fire chief for many years, or assistant fire chief. Don't want to take too much credit. And the wildfires in the West here are terrible. And I developed this idea, and I think it's still a viable idea, but I just couldn't get it to take off like wildfire. And so I put some money into that, about $50,000 into that, and it didn't work. And,
and you've explained that idea to me before. And actually something I forgot about your fire experience. That's something you and I share in common is I was a professional firefighter for 7 years, and I was deployed on some wildland deployments, and your idea is very smart. But just like you're saying, sometimes it's not the right time.
Yeah.
And sometimes everything has to line up at the right time to take off. But as entrepreneurs, we have to take that risk and
try it.
And you have to understand that not everything's going to be a home run. And you should expect and anticipate and actually desire that failure, because it's that failure that you can come back to the drawing board, make some manipulations, and get right back on the horse and get back out there. And that consistency in you and your personality and your leadership in this company has really led you to where you're at today. And I know a lot of people are probably listening to this episode thinking, I don't care about this episode. We're talking about landscape. We're talking about lawn care, construction, asphalt. Well, let me tell you something. I met with your son, Reagan, the other day. And the 5 to 10 year plan for your company here is to get you guys to a $10 million gross annual revenue stream.
Yeah, last year we had 2 million receipts. I went to my guys in the spring and I said, hey, look, we were 2 million last year. We should be 3 million this year. And they were, I don't think we can do that. Here's what we've got lined up. And I said, look, we got 2 million last year, and we can easily do 3 if we have the personnel. And you guys are the foundation for the personnel, and we can do it. And this is how. And after I showed them how it can actually work, they were like, okay. And then they thought about it, and they said, okay, let's do it. And we're going to be pretty close to that 3 million. And now our goal is in the next 5 years to get to 10 million.
And how busy are you in the summertime? Do you guys just sit around, twiddle your thumbs on days because you have no work to do?
We always have work in the summer, always. Now, sometimes the challenge is, of course, being prepared to do the work that's coming.
Yeah.
And weather can be a problem with that. Employees can be a problem with that. Homeowners can be a problem with that. And most of our work is homeowners, probably 85, 90%. The other 15% is commercial. But there's also sorts of monkey wrenches that could be thrown into your day or your week, and you have to be able to adjust to that.
The point I'm making here is that here you are, just crazy busy and getting busier. And the reason that you're so busy is because, quite honestly, there's just not a lot of competition. There are a couple other companies, but none with your reputation, none with your work ethic, none with the culture in your company. And what I'm really trying to drive home is if you're sitting there listening to this episode, there is so much opportunity in front of you. If you think that the market's too saturated, everybody who is rich, they're just going to stay rich, and all the poor people are going to stay poor, you're wrong. You're just wrong. You're out of your mind. It takes getting up, making a plan, putting on your work boots and making it happen. There's so much opportunity in spaces that people completely overlook because they think they don't want to get their hands dirty. They don't want to learn the skill. They're wrong.
Don't let people tell you can't do something. If you desire to do it, give it a shot. Give it a try.
If you're listening to this episode and let's say you're making minimum wage, how much would your life change? Number one, now landscape's a poor example because when you're bootstrapping in the beginning, the schedule is chaotic. You're working your tail off. But how much would your life change if you went from minimum wage to at least $25 an hour? What if you could have a small business where you door knock your neighborhood and get a couple clients to mow their lawn every week, every other week? I have an 18-year-old kid who applied for a mortgage with me. I was telling you the story before we started recording. In high school, when he was 15 years old, he knocked doors in his neighborhood and got 7 clients that paid his sports, his whatever he wanted to do with his friends. When he was 16 years old, he increased his clients to 15 because now he could drive, put the lawnmower in the back of the car. At 18, he graduated high school. All his friends went off to college, and he said, you know what? I'm going to double down. I'm going to hire one of my friends. I'm going to expand to 25 to 30 clients, and I'm just going to mow, and I'm going to mow them all once a week. He works once a week. He mows Friday and Saturday. That 18-year-old kid called me to buy his first home, and he's grossed $85,000 in revenue this year. So if you're sitting there making minimum wage, how much would your life change by mowing 25 lawns a week? And the question I have for you, why aren't you attacking that opportunity? Now, I want to bring this back to you and your company quickly, because what I learned early on working as a laborer in landscape is that having employees that consistently show up to work, that fit the company culture, that are reliable is very difficult. And in my experience with everybody I've ever dealt with on any of your crews, they're respectful, they're timely, they are clean, they aren't swearing. And what you do, your industry is very hard to find employees, very hard, especially consistently find employees that come back for multiple seasons. What are you doing to invest in the culture of your company and your employees that is working? Because it's working very well.
They know our culture. We're pretty well known in the Valley, in the area. And even some of my clients sometimes will send kids or grandkids to work for us for a season or 2 or 3, however long we can get them to stay. I like to train and get them to stay year over year because I don't want to have to train them. We do train them, but if we can get them to stay 2 or 3 or 4 years, every year is a bonus for us. The first year, we don't make any money off of an employee. You don't. It takes too much time to train them. And we watch for especially the youth. If we see somebody that appears to have some work ethic and some energy, that's who we'll go after. And we pay them. We pay them well. And that usually is a good attraction.
We're living in a world where kids, they don't want to work that much. And if they do want to work, they want to do something easy, and then they want to go home and play video games. And I ask a lot of questions. I'm very curious about business. And I go to all these burger shacks, LeBeau's, all of them. And I ask, how much does a kid make working for the summer here? Some of these kids are making $25 an hour flipping burgers down here. And my question to you is, how are you pulling kids away from flipping burgers for $25 an hour and putting them on a manual labor landscape crew in 2023 when kids don't want to do manual labor today?
Yeah. So you got to find the right kids. There's kids that don't want to flip burgers. They don't want to be in a building. So you do have to find kids that want to be outdoors, and adults too. There's adults that don't want anything to do with the outdoors, and they're not who we're looking for. So that's how you find them. They don't want to be indoors. They want to be outdoors. And if they want to learn a skill, it's landscaping, yes, but there's some skill to it, to do it. There is skill. I used to hire for about 15 years. I would use what's called the H-2B visa program. And that's a legal immigration program, seasonal, that the government administers. And the first, 8 years, 10 years, it was pretty good. It was pretty consistent. I could get my guys, they were the same guys coming back every year, and I loved them. These guys from Mexico, and I paid them well. I had to pay them what the government said you had to pay them, and it worked out good. But the government became unreliable. They went to a lottery system on who you could have, because you can only have so many come in according to the law and all that stuff. But it became such that there were so many people asking for the use of this program that they had to institute a lottery. And 4 years in a row, out of A, B, C, and D, A being the best, I got D. And so they would say, yeah, you're going to be able to get them. You're going to be able to get them. And 2 years I went for it and said, okay. And they didn't get here till August. That doesn't work for me. And so the business needs to be consistent and our government needs to be consistent. So there again, I was relying on somebody that I couldn't count on. And that was the federal government. And so we've left that program. I liked it. I loved the people that I brought up and worked with. And now I've gone back to just hiring more full-time people than I ever have. And we'll work through the winter season. And I got to pay them well and keep them happy. That has some benefits because they'll just be here every year no matter what.
Yeah.
And when the snow melts, they're ready. When the snow falls in the fall, we move to snow removal. So that's how I've picked up some great employees.
Yeah.
Paying them well. I watch for them. I reach out to former employees that I liked. There's a kid that I hired years ago, and he's working in Colorado in a landscape company. And every year I'll call him and say, hey, you ready to come back? And he thinks about it. He says, no, I like it here. But I just reach out to people because we had good relationships and I like my people. Yeah, we try to have a clean company, keep them clean, not a lot of cursing. I had to get on my guys the other day, say no more music because they had some garbage music and clients were complaining about it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear their music. So I said, hey, no more music. Just the fun part of running a business.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we got about 5 minutes left and I got 3 big questions that I want to get to. And we'll start easy and we'll migrate to more thought-provoking. The first question is, you say that you have to reinvest in your employees to keep them around. And I've overheard between you and my stepdad, Ernie, and Reagan, there's been some loose talk about, man, affordability. It's a really expensive area up here and housing for employees. And I know there's nothing finite. There's nothing, concrete here, but I am curious, what types of things are you doing to invest in your employees? And you talked about paying them well and keeping them on year round. And it sounds like you're investing in their mindset with these abundance meetings. What is your focus on investing in your employees?
Yeah. So it really is just the wage. Just trying to get that wage up there where they're happy to be here. That money talks.
Absolutely.
And we have a few benefits for them and things like that. I don't have insurance for them though. I could, but I think they've been able to find insurance other places. So I just try to pay them well. And then I try to treat them with respect. I listen to them and I appreciate them. I think those go a long ways too.
So question number 2 here. We're at 2 million gross revenue last year, maybe 3 this year, and we want to get to 10. You cannot just keep doing everything status quo the same way you've always done it. So my question for you is, as a owner, what types of things are you considering and looking at as far as getting to that 10 million revenue line? And how are you firing yourself out of these jobs? Because really, to get to 10 million, you have to fire yourself, and you have to fire yourself as fast as possible.
So one thing that I've never done well, but we are working on now, is processes. Everything's going to have an SOP and a process because it has to be standardized. You have to do everything the same way, and so that you can train that. That way you don't have to always be telling people what to do. You can give them an assignment. They'll know what there is to do. Here's the SOP they've been trained on. That's what they do. We don't have to go back and fix it because it's been done right. The other thing that we're doing is just reaching out to former employees and bringing them back and saying, hey, do you want to be the manager of this division? Do you want to be the division lead? Do you want to be the things like that? So then I can delegate all of these things. And they're the ones that are helping me with these SOPs, because I couldn't do it when I was running the business myself.
Yeah, I love that. And your son, it seems really involved in like setting up these processes to help.
Yeah, Reagan loves that part of the business and planning and strategizing. He's good at it.
Yeah, so. You're lucky to have somebody who has that mindset in the business to say, our goal is to get dad out of here as fast as possible. Right. I want to bring it home with this because this is a show that primarily is focused on investing. We do talk about active incomes, and this is a perfect example. But we also talk about, hey, let's make a lot of income. Let's live below our means. And then let's take those means and do 2 things, really. Number 1 is give it away. Let's give it away so we don't idolize the money. And how radical is it, especially in the society we live in today, to be completely unbound from society to just take money and give it away. And then the other thing that we talk a lot about is taking that money and putting it into investments that develop passive income streams. And so out of curiosity, you're running a very successful business. There's a lot of growth on the horizon. what are you doing? Are you giving back, and are you taking that income and investing it? Because I'm sitting in front of a very humble guy who's moderately dressed, who's not driving around a Ferrari out there. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what you're doing.
On the giving side, of course, in our church, we give 10% of our income, and that's a standard thing. But we've also had some other opportunities because, again, I don't want to rely on an institution of any kind to be my conduit with God. And so we found some other places to give where it's just between us and the Lord, and the people that we give to don't know it. And that's been fun. They don't know, but we know them and we know what needed to happen. I guess there's a couple other people that know because we had to arrange it. And it was pretty significant, and it made a huge impact on some individuals, and it was fun. So that's been great. As far as the recurring revenue and things like that, the alarm company that we have is part of that, but we're trying to build a fourplex. We're going to get a fourplex built this winter and begin doing some renting and things like that. But we have to get our revenue up high enough where we can invest in these things. And as far as living simply so that we can afford that, right now we're living in our RV trailer in the back of our building. Jennifer wants to be next to her garden and her chickens, which is right there this time of year, so she can grow her own food and stuff like that. But then we sold our house a couple of years ago and tried to decide what we're going to be. And in the meantime, we're living in this trailer in the summer. In the wintertime here in Bear Lake, you got to have a decent place to live. So we were just renting a condo.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But see, that right there, how many people are unwilling to just do just that? Here you are, a business owner. Your company's making healthy income. And just so everybody listening is aware, your company's gross revenue is not what you as an owner receive as a distribution, but still, you guys aren't starving to death.
No, but we do need to make some improvements. And actually, I appreciate the talk here because it helps me rejuvenate my need and desire to make sure our net profit is where it needs to be for myself, but also my employees. I've got to keep them safe.
Yeah.
That's the downside of being a business owner. If you care about your people, is you have a lot of responsibility to take care of people. So anybody that's starting a business, that's the downside, is if you feel responsible for them, then it's a lot of pressure.
Absolutely. And you should, as a business owner, you should feel responsible.
One other thing I ought to tell you about is I have a friend, and he said, hey, we ought to start a porta potty company.
I love that.
And talk about dirty jobs. And I would have been really tempted, this is about 10 years ago, to just sell Bear Lake Landscape and do that porta potty business. But at the time, I didn't think there was quite enough need in the valley to live off of it. But you can make a decent living doing porta potties or jobs like that.
Exactly.
That you can be your own boss, you can make a decent living, and you can scale it too if you want to, but they're simple. And some people just want simple. And that was a simple one. Did really well, ended up selling it. I think that kind of fits in with
absolutely
what you're talking about here.
Simple scales. My brother-in-law is interested in actually starting a porta potty business right now. So it's interesting that
nobody wants to do it because it's a crappy job.
It's a crappy job. That's right.
But because not everybody's willing to do that, there's always a good market for it.
Yeah. Bryce, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
Thanks, Tim.
I love having these conversations with other business owners because I get a lot out of it too. It gets me thinking about the next thing. And I know if I did, our listeners did too. And I want to thank you for your time. Before we jump out of here, Bryce, where can people find you and your company?
Yeah, bearlakelandscape.com. There's contact information there, or drive into the valley and go find the go-karts that we're behind. Everybody knows where the go-karts are in the valley. We've been here a long time, and just come out of the Logan Canyon, you'll find us.
That's right. I'm going to put all of their company information in the description and the show notes below. So make sure you scroll down. Thank you guys for sticking around and listening. And hopefully we inspired you to get out there and take a risk and start a small business and go become your own boss, because we need you. We're counting on you to do so. We'll catch you guys on the flip side. Thanks for listening, and catch you next week.